Hi, Gabriela. Thank you for joining me here on this Vegan Plant-Based Summit. How are you today?
Well, thank you, Isabella, for having me. It's really a pleasure to be here with you. I'm very well today, like most days, actually.
That's a great attitude to have. So you're a raw vegan. Tell me a bit about that and where did your journey start?
Oh, goodness. Well, let's go back to 1994 when the hematologist at Whittington Hospital in London suggested that I have a bone marrow test. I had been in their care for nearly a year because of extremely low white blood cell count, which they were concerned about. And even though I didn't have any symptoms, nor was I particularly susceptible to infections, they wanted to rule out that there wasn't something attacking my blood cells. So I went in. I had a bone marrow sample taken, which from my hip bone, which was excruciating. Most painful thing I've ever experienced, I think. And I came home and I went straight to bed and I didn't get up again. The bone marrow test came back as normal. There was nothing wrong, but I was ill. I was literally permanently fatigued and had pains all over my body, day and night. I mean, we just didn't know what was wrong with me. My sleep was disrupted and I started to get other symptoms. I was literally hypersensitive to everything, sound, smell. I mean, it was just awful. And over the next year or so, I spent literally 5 out of 7 days in bed. I was often not able to walk and very often couldn't speak either. I mean, just couldn't get the words out. It took the doctors another 18 months to finally diagnose me with fibromyalgia syndrome. And sort of in addition to the chronic pain and fatigue, I also developed irritable bowel syndrome and hypoglycemia. In retrospect, I think that this invasive bone marrow sample taking from the hip bone, where they basically, put a strong needle into the bone, just flared up something that was underlying there for a long time. So, they put me on amitriptyline, which is kind of like a antidepressant that helps with pain. And it worked for a little while, but I never felt right on it. And after about 6 months, I just decided to take my health into my own hands. And I weaned myself off the antidepressants and I started to experiment with alternative treatments. And I tell you, I actually tried everything under the sun. Some of it helped, some didn't, but I gradually was able to gain back some of my strengths and I was able to go back to work, but I wasn't really fully well and I was always in pain. I was on massive painkillers. I mean, I would buy pain, paracetamol, ibuprofen in 90 packs because I just couldn't be without painkillers. And then something happened in 1998 where I came across a doctor in LA who had found a regime that helped with the symptoms. And I decided to do this. They called it an innocuous drug, which in a way it is, but it was still a drug. I got onto the drug and with it on a high protein, low carbohydrate diet. And protein for me at that time meant meat or some other animal product for every meal, including snacks. A snack would be a cheese cracker or a yogurt or, something like that. I mean, it's just actually quite weird to me to think about in this way. And there was something else about the drug, which was that I don't know, this might not make sense for everybody, but there are receptor cells in our bodies that take substances like medication or herbal treatment, whatever it is. And the receptor cell that takes that particular drug that I was on, which is called guaifenesin, is the same receptor cell that takes salicylic acid. If salicylic acid is in the receptor cell, my drug wouldn't work. And salicylic acid is almost in all cosmetics, in all body care products, in essential oils, in plants. And so I had to be very, very careful what I could do to make that medication work. If I didn't, I would go back to being ill. So I had to stop my favorite activity, which was gardening, because I could only do it fully clothed like a beekeeper. To not expose my skin to plant juices. Gone were those days where being able to carelessly pick some lavender or strawberry or barefoot walking on grass. It would actually be 18 years before I would be able to experience that nature in that way again. So it worked to a degree, but it wasn't quality of life, But I managed to work and all of this, and occasionally had flare-ups. I had to be very careful what I did and what I didn't do. I had to manage what I was eating when really carefully. And then something quite massive happened, really. My husband in 2011 was diagnosed with prostate cancer. Something comes along that's life-threatening. It's a completely different matter. It was like all of a sudden, all focus was on him, while for the last 20 years it was kind of on me. And it's interesting to me in retrospect that that shift in focus already created a shift in my well-being.
Can I just ask you to go back just a little second, because there are a lot of people out there suffering from fibromyalgia, and they say it's not just a physical thing, but it's a mental thing, an emotional thing too. Can you just touch on how you actually felt emotionally and mentally when you were going through that?
Frustrated. I really went onto a downward spiral emotionally and mentally, because everything I did, I was filtered through this. I have fibromyalgia, therefore I cannot. I couldn't go for a picnic and sit on the floor, on the ground, because I knew if I sat on the cold ground for an hour, I'd be ill for a week. It was really difficult for the family, for the children. I felt guilty. I felt frustrated, depressed. And, if I think back and my kind of mental state now, which is like eternally positive, it was eternally negative. And including things like, if I knew that if I would get a cold or a flu, it would hit me harder than anybody else. And so I was terrified. I mean, I wouldn't even imagine how that would be now in the pandemic. I'd be terrified of that, And I was, and being terrified of it meant I just got it. I just had to think cold and I'd get it. It's like, people weren't allowed to come to the house if they had a cold. I wouldn't go out if there was a virus going around. It had such a huge impact on my emotional well-being, but it was creeping up on me. It wasn't like I didn't realize that I was in such a depths of what I would now call depression.
The brain it's very good at doing its job. It's very good at protecting us. So it puts all these mechanisms in place, like the ones that you've just stated, that are designed to protect us, but they do the opposite, don't they? And it takes something like a life-threatening illness for your husband to actually bring your brain back to a center point where it can take a reality check. So tell us a bit more about your husband's journey and how is that gone?
So his was that he just had a routine doctor's appointment. He was 59 years old. They said, oh, let's check your prostate and this and that and the other. And they did and they found his PSA was up. They suggested, when it didn't go down with medication, they suggested that he have a biopsy. They did a 12-needle biopsy. We would never do this again these days, but we did then, or he did. It turned out that he had prostate cancer, and they thought it was early stages and non-invasive, and they just wanted to monitor it. Now, here's the interesting thing. 20 years I was living with this condition called fibromyalgia that doctors had told me cannot be cured, managing the symptoms, right? In steps my husband and says, cancer, I'm not going to have it. I'm going to cure it. And I'm going to do that naturally. And it was a real shock to me, actually. I just wanted him to have the prostate out, because I couldn't quite understand what he was trying to do. And in fact, he did massive research, made us change our diet to an almost plant-based, almost raw vegan diet, changed a lot of things in his lifestyle, including stress reduction, meditation, exercise. I was very resistant because I was already thinking I was doing everything I could. Surely you can't just snap a finger, go vegan and be cancer free. It just didn't seem like to sit well with me. And actually 6 months after his initial diagnosis, or 5 months, his PSA was still going up. They said they wanted to do an MRI. They did an MRI, and the diagnosis came back that there was a large tumor about to push through the prostate wall and that he needed treatment instantly. He was offered either radical surgery, taking the prostate out, or radio and hormone therapy for quite an extended period of time. We said we needed to think about it, and I'm not kidding you, the oncologist said to us, what's there to think about? You either do the treatment or you die. Well, we decided to think about it. And I'm so glad. I have to say, I'm so grateful to my husband for doing everything he did, because I probably wouldn't have, because I was in ill mindset. I was in sickness mindset, and he wasn't. He wanted to be healthy. And it really took me a long time to understand what he was doing and to fully get on board with it. But once I got fully on board with it, we just embarked on this journey together. Now, the interesting thing is that when we started to think about it, we looked at alternatives. And, that included, we borrowed some money so he could see a private surgeon. We saw a private naturopathic doctor who specialized in cancer. We eventually ended up with a urologist in London who suggested to do another MRI 3 months after the initial one. And he did the MRI, and I will never forget the feeling when we went and saw the consultant, because we thought, okay, this consultant, I have to step back a bit. The consultant in London was just starting to offer NHS trials for something called high-focused ultrasound treatment, which is very non-invasive, very specific, and seemed to show really good results with prostate cancer. And we were hoping that the second MRI would say, yes, my husband, Neil, is eligible for this treatment. So we went in, and he had the screen. He actually had both pictures, first MRI and second MRI, on his screen. And he said, your prostate shows no sign whatsoever of a tumor. In fact, his words were, you have a beautifully clean prostate. We were just in tears. We were in shock, in fact. And it was unbelievable. And the doctor couldn't tell us why. And I'm not saying, and neither is Neil, that we cured his cancer. But what we do know is if we hadn't looked for other options, he would have either now be without the prostate or had the other treatment and all the side effects that come along with that. So, to cut a long story short, after this positive diagnosis, he went into a healing crisis. He just was really ill then for about 3-4 weeks. And then we started to gradually build up his strength again. And coincidentally, I found an article by a woman about raw food, and she had cured her fibromyalgia. And I was fascinated. And I thought, what's there to lose? We're already almost vegan. I mean, we would occasionally eat, I was more the meat eater because I had been trained that fibromyalgia means I need my protein. I need it, and I had to eat every 2 hours to fuel my hypoglycemia. I thought, well, what's there to lose? And we did a 3-day, you could download this little 3-day plan to go raw food. We did that. We loved it. And I felt good on it. And I said to him, how would you like to go completely raw? And he said, great idea, let's do it. Now that's brilliant. When the couple says they do it together, always easier. And I'm not ever recommending this to any of my health coaching clients. But I decided to stop all medication on that day that we decided to go raw. I didn't take any painkillers anymore. I stopped my fibromyalgia medication. I wanted to see whether this is going to do something for me. And then we just went and did smoothies and juicing and got all the equipment and went 100% raw. And within 6 months, I was basically symptom-free. It was amazing.
So you went from not being able to sit on the grass, not being able to pick strawberries or lavender or do any of the things that you love to do with nature, to doing whatever you wanted with nature. That's amazing.
Do you know, I remember taking my shoes off and going out in the garden and walking on the grass and, picking up all the different herbs that were growing in our garden that I was previously only able to touch with gloves because plant juice goes straight into the skin, so salicylic acid would go into my cells if I touched basil or something like that. I just walked around the garden and I went like this, and it was like I felt so alive. I just couldn't believe the freedom. And it was so amazing that I just decided this is something I need to share with others. That's what I wanted. And our immune system, I told you earlier, I had to just think cold. I haven't had a flu ever since I went raw. This is like, we're coming up to 10 years now. Amazing.
That is amazing. And that's the sentiment that's coming through the summit is when they've gone plant-based, not just vegan, but plant-based vegan, you get this whole rush of energy and your skin clears up, your muscles don't hurt, and you've just got a new lease of life. Now, for those at home who are saying, raw vegan, what do you eat? Carrots, lettuce, nuts? How do you cook with raw vegan? Because you can still cook, but how do you cook? And what do you cook?
It's interesting again because I was such an exquisite cook, but meat-based, meat and dairy-based. When Neil said I'm not going to eat anything from an animal anymore, I opened the fridge and I looked in and I thought, what am I going to cook? Everything was in there: dairy, cheeses, bacon, you name it. Gross really now, but then it was like, for me, what am I going to do? And I had to re-educate myself. I actually trained then as a raw chef first. That was my first thing, because one thing I knew was that if I adopt this way of eating, it's got to taste great. And honestly, in the beginning, I made everything raw, from raw lasagna to raw, shepherd's pie. And I bought a dehydrator. I did a lot of elaborate foods. We don't eat like this anymore unless we have guests. These days, it's literally a big salad with a bit of other stuff thrown in. And we're not 100% raw anymore either. So we have about 5 to 10% in a day of our food is cooked. But it always amazes me when people think, it's somehow boring, because to me, every vegetable is delicious. And I love a plateful of rainbow colors. So it's when you just find different ways of preparing, even just cutting a carrot. I mean, you can cube a carrot, you can cut it into little sticks, you can slice it, you can go do chunks, you can grate it. So I think there are so many options, but a lot of it, I mean, the first thing that we did was just green smoothies and green juices, and they're really easy to do. And to be honest, I feel that anybody, even if that's all they did, if they're on a vegan diet, perhaps already, to just add that little bit of raw food in by having a smoothie or a juice, or say, make your main meal a big, colorful salad, rather than, maybe a burger or a curry. Have that as well, but make one meal a really big salad, then you're already nearly there. I mean, David Wolf, who I did my raw nutrition training with, he said, 51% raw is already extremely good. I think the 100% is great if you really want to heal something. But even that is not necessary. We know that people also heal on a cooked vegan diet, a healthy cooked vegan diet.
There's so many good vegan diets out there that sometimes it's hard to decide what you're going to do, what way you're going to go, but you can have a bit of everything. Like you say, you can have a bit of cooked food, a bit of raw vegan food, you can have your salads, or you can have your burgers. It just doesn't have to be a meat product. Now, one of the things that goes hand in hand with being vegan and plant-based and the lifestyle itself is the environment and animal welfare. What's your position on the two?
Wow. Do you know, this is really interesting again to me, because of just how my mind and my thinking has shifted around this, because we were environmentalists, my entire adult life, I've been an environmentalist. And often people would say to us, you're such environmentalists, why don't you go vegan? That would be the natural next step. And we always had all the excuses, we only eat grass-fed, locally reared, We just managed to ignore the fact that that animal has to be killed. And in some way, often mistreated, even in local grass-fed organic. We did know where the animals came from. We did see the animals. But there's something in the mind just shuts off against what actually happens to this animal when they take it to the slaughterhouse. So when we went vegan, we really did it for health reasons. And to me, the shift came that the more we ate plant-based, and the more we were a little bit disgusted by meat. So if we went somewhere and they did a barbecue, we just felt like it smelled like dead flesh, and that wasn't appealing. And the same with kind of dairy. The smell just was obnoxious. And suddenly we started to look into the whole thing around animal welfare. And we are passionate vegans now. I take friends on a walk past a field with piglets in. When as soon as they go and they say, oh, look at those piglets, aren't they cute? I say, yeah, and they're going to be murdered in about 4 months. And they go like, what? And I said, yeah, about 6 months is the age of a piglet before it gets slaughtered. And that really opens people's eyes. It's shocking, but sometimes we need to be a bit shocking. And I just didn't want to know, but when you're being faced with the reality, and then something amazing happens. So we now live by this idea of ahimsa, the Sanskrit word for do no harm. And I believe that doing no harm is not just doing no harm to the environment, but doing no harm to animals and doing no harm to your own body. And if we do that, then we create more health emotionally within ourselves. Does that make sense, what I'm saying?
Makes perfect sense. Now, you say you have always been an environmentalist. There are a lot of issues that are being raised at the moment with regards to deforestation and fishing and just our general approach to the environmental catastrophes that are happening. What did you learn in your development through to your raw base and to your vegan empowerment coaching, your personal development for others? What did you actually learn that you can shed light on for other people?
Well, I think obviously the whole health of the ocean, the runoff from farms into the oceans, into the water. You know, there are whole coastal stretches off the coast of America contaminated, just off-run from intensive farming. So there's all that, of course. Vegetable farming, even if we do it in a large scale, is just less harmful to the environment. There's no question about it. There is, of course, a question also around, you know, monocultures, and we need to be aware of that. It's quite a fine line to tread, I think, including things like, you know, what clothes do I wear? And, you know, is it okay to buy plastic clothing that creates microplastics in the oceans when we wash it? I mean, it's just like a nightmare, isn't it? So you have to constantly kind of find ways of making the best choice possible at that point, and hoping and always looking that there is further to go. I think we also need to look at things that we put on our bodies. So, you know, the shampoo we use, the soap we use, the creams we use, the sun protection, deodorants, whatever it is, that kind of thing. Because even if it doesn't harm us, it may well harm the environment. And I do find that is where perhaps sits our biggest challenge as vegans, is to be vegan. So we're not actually using any animal products, but we're also not using other ingredients or products that may, as a secondary result, harm animals and the planet. So it's that, you know, and that's including medication. I mean, it's no question some people may need medication, but perhaps, you know, really think about which medications do I need to take, because we pee them out. They go back into the environment and they create havoc in our waterways, you know. So it is endless, Isabella. I mean, it's like...
It's an endless nightmare of what do I do next for the environment, for the animals, for myself, for other people. Where do we all start? And there's so much information out there that we can often become mind boggled by it all. And which bit of information do you believe and which bit you don't? But you're a coach, you're a wellness coach. What do you actually tell your clients?
Well, I really take them step by step. You know, I think there is no value in throwing everything at a client in one go and overwhelm them with decision making. So we take it one step at a time. If I can get a client to be happy to go vegan and a little bit raw, then I've gained a step. And then maybe the next step is we look at their house environment. You know, how do we reduce toxins in the house, in their cleaning materials and in their cosmetics? And we look at what supplements they take or things like that, but really take it step by step. And I tend to not become a vegan preacher to my clients. that's not my role as a health coach. I've also trained with Will Tuttle, who wrote a book called The World Peace Diet, a book I think everybody should read and every vegan should read as well. But he also talks about the impact animal agriculture has on our emotional and mental well-being. And so I trained with him and I give talks on this topic. And when I do that, I become a passionate vegan advocate. But I don't do that with my health clients because my primary reason they're working with me is they want to be healthy. But what I do help them is shift their mindset away from trying to fix a problem or get rid of a symptom or fight cancer. I help them to transition to a mindset of health and wellness. It's a completely different way of approaching it. Because when you treat just the problem, the moment that problem gets a little bit less, the motivation to carry on with the lifestyle goes. I see that often when I talk to people and I tell them about cancer, raw food, and then they say, oh, yeah, I did that for a while when I had cancer. And I said, what now? Oh, well, I'm clear now, so it's okay. And they just go back to their normal lifestyle. That's because their focus was on fixing a problem. But when you start to focus on creating health and wellness, and not just for yourself, but for the planet and animals, then you have ongoing motivation to do the best you can. And then veganism is just the natural outcome of that. And when you do that more and more, then it becomes the opposite of a vicious cycle, a really positive, wonderful cycle of the more I eat vegan, the more passion and compassion I have, the more peaceful I become internally, the more mentally well I am, emotionally and spiritually well I am. And that reverberates out into the universe, in my opinion.
That's amazing. And that's something that people have been saying all the way through this summit. And it starts with loving yourself, and loving that will then pass to others, and then it will pass to the environment, to the animals, and it'll just be an all-encompassing belief and value. So you're an ambassador for a wellness product, a wellness company, should I say. Would you like to tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I'd love to. I mean, I'm still working as a health and raw food nutrition coach. And because of that work, obviously people would come to me, clients would come to me and say, well, what supplement do I take? Or what shampoo do I use? And I used to always just pick and choose from different places because, one company would make a shampoo that I thought was okay. And when I look at these products, I look at what's in it, apart from the fact that it says on the bottle, all natural and pure and with, lavender essential oil. But what else is in it that might have a negative impact on a person's well-being or ultimately in the environment? It was really difficult for me to find clean products, and I had to pick and choose. And when I came across Ringana, which is the company that I now work with, I just found that they were giving me all of that. I was unbelievably impressed by their lack of things like toxic ingredients, fillers, preservatives, colors. Even a vegan product can be mostly natural and still contain some kind of color that is only there to make the thing look nicer when you don't need that. Who ultimately cares what it looks like? It's just a marketing thing. So I was really impressed by that. And when I then saw that they were also having extremely high values around ethics and sustainability, I just decided to become an ambassador, or actually a partner with this company. And it's been quite amazing to me because I can educate people around conscious consumerism, vegan consumerism, reducing clutter and waste in the bathroom. I always say I create green peace in the bathroom through our products, and simultaneously I'm also helping other people create vegan businesses. So to me, this is like a win-win situation, and that's kind of what I really love about it. So I still work as a health and raw food nutrition coach, but my main job is now to, promote these products, help people choose the right ones, and also help other people build businesses with it, which is just fun.
Well, that shows dedication to the environment and to health, and obviously, as a result, the animals. And that's absolutely amazing. And you've given us a lot of information there. If you could sum it up in one or two takeaways, what would you tell people?
It's such a hard question. Depends on who the people are or is. But I think, I feel, and this is to do with most of the research I've done and also the training I've had. I believe that vegan is the future, and we're either going to be forced to do it by environmental issues, or we voluntarily choose to become vegans. So to me, the voluntary option is the better option. I truly believe that as a first, if you're not decided yet on going vegan, or you're maybe on the edge, or maybe you're vegan but you're not having really looked at how your vegan products or your vegan lifestyle also impact on the environment, then please bring the two together. Don't see it as a separate thing. Ahimsa to me is the word, it encapsulates it for me. And it's often used in veganism because it basically says, do no harm. And that leads to a healthier and more peaceful life, which will lead to a more healthy and more peaceful world, in my opinion. So why don't we go there? Let's just go there and do it, and also have a positive outlook. I one of the talks I give often at vegan fairs is, I call it how to tame your inner angry vegan. I feel there is a lot of angry veganism, and we all go through that phase. Every vegan goes through that angry phase, when we first realize what's going on. But we need to move through that, and we need to come out of it and become positive rather than angry, because anger causes us to be ill. But when we really look at the world and say, this is a beautiful world, and I have everything in my power to help this world to become even more beautiful, then that's a really good way going forward, in my opinion.
Do you think that we'll see a tipping point within our generation, or 2 or 3 generations? When do you think that tipping point will be?
I think we're quite close. I mean, the fact that veganism is now fashionable, and that and that vegan companies pop up all over the place. People go vegan. People are turning more to ways of being peaceful through meditation, through spiritual practices. I do think we're close, and I hope that I'm going to see it. Well, I'm planning to live quite a long time, Isabella, so I definitely hope to see it. And I know, there's been research done on what young people are looking for, and they're looking for jobs in companies that are sustainable, that are ethical. So there is much more demand for that. There's pressure on cultures to change. I do really encourage people to experiment with raw food. I've actually published a recipe book for raw recipes to make it quite easy for people. So it's something I, give to my clients or when people come to my retreats. And there's so much out there now. When I started, there wasn't. But now you can just Google and just start to experiment. Put a bit more raw food. Raw food has a vibrational quality that we lose when we cook it. It's more alive. So that gets transmitted into the body. And I feel that's a really great idea, and it develops your sense of flavor. So you're your taste buds change. My mum always says to me when I buy a fresh bag of baby spinach and I put my hand in and I start chomping on it, she said, you eat spinach like other people eat crisps. But it's because I enjoy and I've learned to appreciate the flavor. And we don't cover up so much in raw food, while in cooking we often eat spices and herbs and salt and pepper and all those things to make it taste different. I would love to encourage people to just learn to love vegetables in their own right. And I think that's maybe a parting word I just want to give. Start enjoying your vegetables.
Thank you. Thank you, Gabriela, for being part of this vegan plant-based summit. You've given a lot of useful information there for the viewers at home and a lot to think about.
Well, thank you, Isabella, for having me. It's been a real pleasure to talk with you. Thank you.